is going to determine if we're able to save the human or not. So I think ideals are very important. The trick to it is that all of our ideals have a tendency to overreach and replace the difference. And this is where actually it's a very interesting notion. I'm quite a fan of a thinker. Her name is Simone Weil. I think you can associate her with a lot of kind of non-rationality, Ivan Illich, and so on. But she said this very interesting idea, and she's obviously a Christian. She says, if you have to choose between truth and Christ, seek truth, because it won't be long before seeking truth you find yourself falling into the arms of Christ. It's a very interesting notion, and you say, wow, that's pretty heretical. But what she's getting at is the following. The idea of Christ tends to become an empty signifier because it habituates you out of the fullness of human, and it also gets culturalized and put into a very stagnant system. So when you seek Christ, what ends up happening is you ultimately can come to just repeat the logic of the society or the logic of the ideology. But when you seek truth, which for her would be what Christ actually is, you end up leaving that in a kind of Deleuzian line of flight, and you shatter through that, right? And so also too, though, you could turn truth into a kind of separation from the unfolding of the idea. Oh, yeah, we care about truth in this university as it leaves behind the idea of the university. And really, the truth just becomes the dissertation and the position, right? So every ideal, if you are not diligent, can become a kind of counterfeit of itself. And you see, I think what kind of happened in history is, well, ideals became counterfeits of themselves, which then was taken as evidence of they're false, they don't exist, therefore we're better to do away with them, when really the issue is that ideals can only be salvaged in spaces of the shock of difference. And if you want to save ideals, you have to be willing to go into the contradictions and the shock of difference. But since we kind of didn't want to do that and it was easier to do the system, well then, yeah, in the system versus the social, as the review gets into as a general distinction, in the system, ideals don't have a role and they don't seem to matter. So why do it, right? Why do you need an ideal to make capital run? The whole idea of capital is that it can run without you believing in it. It doesn't need your assent, right? Like AI, capital, machine, these are things like ideals in that they have a kind of unfolding to them, but it's a mechanical unfolding versus an unfolding of the human, right? It's like Brian was saying in that tremendous peak with Illich. He was saying, thinking is not something to be like owned or possessed. Thinking is something to be experienced. I think it gets into Mikey's point as well, and then I'll bring it to a close, is with an institutional incentive simply don't allow you to, go through tribunal zero and have people find the problems of your thinker, because then you could lose a position, right? So then thinking cannot unfold, right? Idea cannot unfold, right? So likewise, but isn't it funny how there's something about capital that's kind of like a counterfeit of unfolding? It kind of has this movement to it, liquidity, it just kind of goes, which is a counterfeit to the unfolding of the human. It's like it, it's analogous, but that's why it's so dangerous, because in being like it, it's easy to not realize it's not the same, right? So you have this mechanical unfolding that comes to define human life, that in a mechanical unfolding, ideals don't seem to have a role because you just need programming. You could almost say that the opposite of ideals are programs. Like you program it and then it just kind of runs, right? An ideal is something the human unfolds toward that is not programmable because it has to be tarried with, wrestled with, and worked with. And ideals is like a program in that it's a directionality, it's a certain way of unfolding, but you can't set it and forget it. That's kind of a big difference for me between system and social. Is a system, you can set it and forget it. But the social, if you ever forget it, it's gone. And so you have to be perpetually doing that human work. But that human work is precisely in the shock of difference. And then here's the problem. This is the problem. Under a technological essence, you could use Heideggerian language just about, ideals don't seem to have a role. Because practically speaking, programming is all you need. It is not by chance that it's today when there's a certain saturation point, to use Mr. Ebert's language, of the technological unfolding that seems inadequate and to be leaving us behind, that humans are going, I don't like where this is going, like mouse in the hallway of a little fable, right? Or you're like, So there's a kind of looking back, maybe we forgot something that you're trying to recover, and you go, oh, it's the ideal that becomes the trajectory of a human unfolding, distinct from a machine a machine programming. It just makes me think of, I was just speaking with the great Cleo and Dimitri on Dante, and, you know, it's that idea that Dante at the beginning of the Inferno remembers he forgot something, whereas people in hell who have crossed the river of forgetting forgot that they forgot, right? Damnation is when you forget you forgot, right? You're done at that point. But with Dante, and my theory is that he remembers that he forgot Beatrice, this, well, ideal of beauty, basically, but he can't put it into words, right? The key is, I think today, and I think this is very much manifested theory underground, there is a feeling of a remembering that something was forgotten, a remembering that something was lost. And that's precisely where you actually have the possibility of, well, ascending toward, you know, the Paradiso, the Beatrice, the beatific vision, the human, as Dante puts it. But Dante has to go through Inferno and Purgatorio and a whole lot of risk and challenges in order to have that movement. And that's another reason why, actually, I think we can throw away ideals, is because when you realize an ideal, we tend to associate experience in an ideal as wonderful and happy and everything is grand. But actually, the original experience of an ideal is you must now suffer negativity. You must now suffer the real. You must now suffer the sock of difference. But since we have the wrong emotional association of ideals with reality, we associate the experience of ideal with a happy emotion. That's another reason we've thrown out ideals, because the actual experience of an ideal is difficult. It's hard. It demands something of you. Oh, well, I'm going to go back to the program then. I'm going to go back to the system, because you have the wrong emotional association. So basically, democracy, pluralism, all of these things are impossible in a manner that is human without ideals, because without ideals, you can't have a shared space for a shock of difference that then works the contradiction out of which we can move ourselves to being more fully human, as opposed to programmed away by some sort of mechanic unfolding that's simply a counterfeit.